I'll check. We're ready.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting for February 27th, 2007. And Roberta, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Long. Supervisor Foy. Supervisor Bennett.
Here.
Supervisor Flynn. And Supervisor Parks.
I'm here also. Thank you. Our next item on our agenda is our moment of affirmation, and today is a special day. I believe it's the birthday of Longfellow, and we have Steve Brogdon, the director of our Thousand Oaks Library, who's going to come up and take this time to recite some Longfellow for us. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Supervisor Parks. It's a pleasure for me to be here and share Longfellow's birthday with you. It is his 200th birthday, and today is the actual day of his birthday. So it's a pleasure. In this age of TiVo and YouTube and all that, it's a pleasure to recite the words of a wordsmith such as Longfellow. But you didn't come to hear me speak, you came to hear Longfellow. So let me go ahead and read for you Paul Revere's Ride. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light, one if by land and two if by sea, and I, on the opposite shore, will be ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm. Then he said, good night, and with muffled oar silently rowed to the Charlestown shore, just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging white at her moorings lay the Somerset, British man of war, a phantom ship with each mast and spar across the moon like a prison bar, and a huge black hulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. Meanwhile, his friend, through alley and street, wanders and watches with eager ears till in the silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barrack door, the sound of arms and the tramp of feet, and the measured tread of the grenadiers marching down to their boats on the shore. Then he climbed the tower of the Old North Church by the wooden stairs with stealthy tread to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled the pigeons from their perch on the somber rafters that round him made masses and moving shapes of shade, by the trembling ladder steep and tall to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen, and looked down a moment on the roofs of the town and the moonlight flowing over all. Beneath, in the churchyard, lay the dead, in their night encampment on the hill, wrapped in silence so deep and still that he could hear, like a sentinel's tread, the watchful night wind as it went creeping along from tent to tent, and seeming to whisper, all is well. A moment only he feels the spell of the place and the hour, and the secret dread of the lonely belfry and the dead. For suddenly all his thoughts are bent on a shadowy something far away, where the river widens to meet the bay, a line of black that bends and floats on the rising tide like a bridge of boats. Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred with a heavy stride on the opposite shore, walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side, now gazed at the landscape far and near, then impetuous, stamped the earth and turned and tightened his saddle girth. But mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the Old North Church as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and somber and still. And lo, as he looks, on the belfry's height a glimmer, and then a gleam of light. He springs to the saddle, the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes, till full on his sight a second lamp in the belfry burns. A hurry of hoofs in a village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles, in passing, a spark struck out by a steed flying fearless and fleet. That was all, and yet through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night, and the spark struck out by that steed in his flight kindled the land into flame with its heat. He has left the village and mounted the steep, and beneath him, tranquil and broad and deep, is the mystic, meeting the ocean tides. And under the altars that skirt its edge, now soft on the sand, now loud on the ledge, is heard the tramp of his steed as he rides. It was 12 by the village clock when he crossed the bridge into Medford town. He heard the crowing of the cock and the barking of the farmer's dog, and felt the damp of the river fog that rises after the sun goes down. It was 1 by the village clock when he galloped into Lexington. He saw the gilded weathercock swim in the moonlight as he passed, and the meeting house windows, blank and bare, gaze at him with a spectral stare, as if they already stood aghast at the bloody work they would look upon. It was 2 by the village clock when he came to the bridge in Concord town. He heard the beating of the flock and the twitter of birds among the trees, and felt the breath of the morning breeze blowing over the meadows brown. And 1 was safe and asleep in his bed, who at the bridge would be the first to fall, who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball. You know the rest. In the books you have read how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again under the trees at the turn of the road, and only pausing to fire and load. So through the night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. For borne on the night wind of the past, through all our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need, the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Our library director from Thousand Oaks and Longfellow's 200th birthday. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, let me say that your library is beautiful. It's one of the best I've been in.
Thank you very much. The community really supports the library, and it shows with that. It's a team effort for sure.
And so does the city.
Right. Thank you.
With that, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Madam Chair, I do have a card.
On moment of affirmation. Okay, Carol Dean Williams, you have a card.
Since the Thousand Oaks Library Director is here, I have a short prayer for your Ventura County Library Director. Almighty God, Jackie Griffith, Director of the Ventura County Library, has been mean to me, but I forgive her. And I want to thank you for the kindness of Johnny Johnson this morning, for he has been kind to me. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
And now we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance. Supervisor Foy, would you please lead us? The next item on our agenda are our minutes, and I still haven't received them, so I would ask that we continue them. Do we have a motion to continue?
I'd like to request to continue the minutes of January 23rd to the March 6th.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and seeing no objections, our minutes will be continued to our next meeting. And now I will go to agenda review, and Mr. Johnston, you have some suggestions?
Yeah. Madam Chair, we have 3 modifications to the agenda. We're requesting item number 39 be removed from the agenda, be brought back at a later time. Item number 46 has a revised signature page on it. And item 48, we also request that that be removed from the agenda and be brought back later.
Okay. And does the board have any requests on the agenda? Did you, Supervisor Flynn?
No, we're starting out there yet.
Okay.
I want to make a comment on 16 and 17.
Okay, and then when we get to the consent calendar, we can call those items out. Do I have a motion to
Yeah.
accept the agenda as revised?
Move the agenda as revised.
We have a motion and a second. Seeing no objections, then that passes. We'll now go to our consent agenda items, and we have one request. Supervisor Flynn, you wanted to remove an item?
Well, I'm not opposed to the items, but on 16, I'm not opposed to the
Okay.
two items, 16 and 17, but on both of them, especially on 16, rather, we need to have some outcomes. How are we doing as far as measurements of outcomes? Are we successful? Where do we stand? What kind of a grade would we give ourselves on the money that goes to the Oxnard Boys and Girls Club, and then the money that is spent or given, rather, by the Boys and Girls Club to nonprofits? How are the nonprofits, and who are the nonprofits? It doesn't identify. So if the staff could get back to me on that, I would appreciate it. Then on 17, again, I don't oppose it, but it is a new program, if I'm reading it correctly. And if it's a new program, I would prefer that the new programs come on the regular agenda, because it would help us remember what the programs are, number one. There's so many of them. And number two, so that we can see what kind of a response we're getting from those, what is our success rate, and so forth. So we need some measurements here, and we need the outcomes. We need to know how these programs are doing. Madam Chair, thank you. I move the consent. I have item number 3.
We're not going to move the whole consent, I think, at this point, though we do have a motion, and thank you for that. Supervisor Flynn wanted to discuss two items on here. I also have a question on a couple of items, too. I have a question on item 13. I don't know if someone from GSA is here. Thank you. And also a comment on item 10. On 13, this is to approve a increase in the agreement for the contractor that does the Soul Park Golf Course. I think it was about a $100,000 increase.
No, it's 20, Rebecca Arnold, General Services Agency. The request before your board today is to exceed the $100,000 limit.
Oh, by $28,000.
Correct.
Okay. My question is regarding the fees, if you're looking at potentially increasing the fees. I know right now that we're kind of at a threshold where it may be actually turning people away. So I'm concerned about the fees and if there is an increase proposed in the future.
Currently, as the letter states, we are in a process for a request for proposals from future operators or potential operators. Part of that proposal asks that they give us a fee structure. So it would be coming back to us from a variety of sources or individuals, groups who are managers of golf courses to let us know whether or not we are in the market or not for those fees.
Okay. Well, I guess then I've just made my feelings known about the concept, and I think it would be nice if we had an RFP out there that looked at keeping the fees as they are, too. So, all right, thank you for your response.
The fees will be set by the GSA and the Parks Advisory Group, probably.
That is correct.
What this will do, we'll give you a survey of what you believe the market rate to be, and then that will be, or are you saying that this bid, if it were to be given to a particular management group, doesn't mean that they determine the rates, does it?
No, it does not.
Right.
That still resides with the General Services Agency and the county.
Right, and I know it doesn't generally get to the Board of Supervisors, but as a member of the Board of Supervisors, I think the fees are high enough. So I don't want to end up turning people away. And I would also like to see what kind of participation, how many people are using the course over time. If we can get that maybe for the last 5 years and see if we have had a drop-off. Obviously, when we did construction there, it reduced the number of people using it, but I'm wondering if we're picking that back up or not. Thank you. Supervisor
May
Flynn.
I just ask a question? If you don't know, if you could get back to me on it. Highlands Golf LLC, they operate golf courses at other places in the county, do you know?
They do have the long-term lease with Rustic Canyon, which they did build for the county.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. The other one that I just wanted to make a request on, item 10. And this is an approval. We're appointing people in lieu of election. Again, we had several positions that weren't challenged, so they're just being appointed. And what I would like to see, because I've requested in the past to make sure that we at least notice the openings in newspapers in the localities where there are going to be seats open. And I think we're doing that now. I would really like to see, along with these requests to appoint in lieu of election, the actual notice also in the packet. And if we're doing any press release or advertising, I think that would be great too. So maybe in the future, if we can include that with the appointment requests in lieu of election, then we're understanding that these notices are getting out there. Okay, and now Carol Dean Williams, you wanted to comment on a consent item also?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The clerk pointed out I have a record number of cards, so I've got to measure each word unless the chair is kind enough to give me a little extra time. I reviewed the material from July to January, and the receipts are $2,314,271,414.32. The disbursements are $2,341,000,000. Has the 4 and the 1 been transposed? It's 314 versus 341. $931,468.19. Could I get an answer to that because of my limited time?
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Matheny will be in later, and we can ask him then. The item 23. This is just that the disbursements are more than the receipts. Okay, with that then, I think we have addressed all the issues of the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda items 10 through 24? We do have a motion and a second, and seeing no objections, then that passes. Now we're going to go to public comments, and we have a group of special ladies here, and I'm going to ask the board's indulgence. I have a resolution to present to these ladies, and if our Carolina Trekkers will please come up to the microphone. We have a resolution for you, and I'm going to read it here and then come on down there. This is a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of Ventura County honoring the Carolina Trekkers. Whereas thousands of women suffer from strokes annually, yet many are ignorant of the symptoms of a stroke, thereby delaying diagnosis and treatment. And whereas Andy Mills and Edie New have sisters Mary Booker and Julie New, who have been disabled by strokes and know firsthand the impacts of the lives of all concerned, and have dedicated themselves to raising awareness and funding for research by riding their horses across America. And whereas Andy and Edie, riding Whiskey and Jericho, joined by their crew, Marla McKinney and Wanda Paradise, and canine best friend who isn't here this morning, companion and protector Amos, make up the Carolina Trekkers. And whereas after a year of planning their cross-country journey, the Carolina Trekkers have chosen Ventura County to begin their 3,000-mile ride home to South Carolina, departing from the Ventura County Fairgrounds on what will literally be a coast-to-coast adventure. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ventura County Board of Supervisors takes great pleasure in honoring the Carolina Trekkers and calls upon the citizens of Ventura County to raise their awareness of the causes, symptoms, and treatments of strokes in women, and wishes the Carolina Trekkers safe travels and happy trails. And if you'd like to make some comments, I'll come on down and present this to you.
The only comment I have to say is thank you very much.
Could you tell us real quickly how will you handle, particularly as you get past the Mississippi River, do you have horse trails that you can basically ride, or are you on the sides of the roads?
There's a lot of places we have to have escorts. We have to have escorts across the Mississippi River. We have to have escorts across dams and places like that. Most of the time we'll be off the side of roads or on BLM land. As we get farther east, there are some trails where we'll go cross country off the road while the RV and our support vehicle have to stay on the road. So it's just depending on where we are and what the situation is there.
What percentage of the time will you be on the sides of roads?
Probably 65, 75%.
Good luck.
Thank you.
They're our official photographer.
And when is the departure? When do they?
May I just say something, Madam Chair? We just heard a beautiful poem about Paul Revere for a different purpose, but I think we have 4 Paul Reveres here today, making people more aware of the cause of cancer.
Thank you very much.
My thanks also to GSA that assisted in finding them a location. You're leaving today, is that right? Yes, they actually stayed over at extra.
Going out tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning.
We're packing up today.
Okay. What time will you be leaving?
Early. We're not sure exact time, but
Okay.
probably about 8. Between 8 and 9, I would say.
And, well, we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll go then to our other public comment cards. I only have one public comment card. Oh, no, I have a few more here. Let's see. We have Joan Dewey.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Joan DeWile, and I've handed out to you the Phyllis Schlafly report. In it, you'll find the timeline of the impending North American Union. It's an outgrowth of the Security and Prosperity Partnership and NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. The Security and Prosperity Partnership, as you know, is an agreement signed by President Bush and President Vicente Fox and Canada's Prime Minister Martin, unifying the United States, Canada, and Mexico into the North American Union, a borderless union. It'll be only perimeter borders. We will no longer have a border with Mexico or Canada. All of this was done by the President without the approval of Congress or the American people. All of this was done secretly and only exposed through the Freedom of Information Act disclosures. I encourage the Ventura County Board of Supervisors to send a letter to our state legislators demanding that the state of California petition Congress to remove the United States from the Security and Prosperity Partnership and the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. NAFTA is the foundation upon all of this, upon which all of this is built. Please read this short report and draft a letter to the state legislature soon. This is something that must be taken care of. Their timetable is 2010. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, I believe, is P.J. Bourbonis.
Bourbonnais.
Bourbonnais, I apologize. I haven't seen that name before.
Well, neither had I. I saw it. Good morning. My name is P.J. Bourbonnais, and I'm here. I'm just echoing what my friend and colleague Joan DeWile just said. However, I want to go further. I want to talk about the North American Union and this eminent domain where they are seizing some properties been owned by families for generations, and they're putting this highway. Has anybody heard about the transcontinental highway they're putting from Canada to Mexico? Has anyone heard about that? It's under construction. And that eliminates our borders. That takes away property. It destroys the American dream of owning your own home or having your own property. It's got to be stopped. And I really implore you to contact Congress and at least put the tourist vote in to oppose it. Let's don't just lay down and let them take it. I ask you. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. And then our last public comment card, Carol Dean Williams, for the third time.
How much time?
He's 3 minutes and 46 seconds. Go.
Carol Dean Williams, a 61-year
you don't
resident.
need to use all that time if you don't want to.
Oh, okay. Well, they say I've been picking on the cowboys, so I had to write a cowgirl poem. Cowgirl up, supervisors. Hey, it's time to cowgirl up, Parks and Long. I saw Linda riding down Thousand Oaks Boulevard. So, Kathy, sing us a cowgirl song. Am I the only other cowboy besides Cowboy Mike? Shirt howdy, he put out a CD of his own cowboy likes. Am I the only other cowboy besides Cowboy Mike? Skirts howdy, he gave me his CD, and now we know we're just alike. Well, I have the Horn Award, but not for you people. I have the Horn Award for people who waste taxpayers' money. Well, Steve Bennett's on the list. I'm sorry, he's a supervisor, but on Measure P6, $185,000 of public money was wasted, was defeated. Steve Bennett donated $1,000 of his own money, so he can throw his money away. The Ventura County Sheriff Deputy Association did $1,000. They can throw their money away. The Peace Officers Research Association of California gave $5,000. They can throw their money away. $490,192.47 was wasted on the failed measure of P6. Here's the invoice from the county. The city of Ventura paid $65,192.47 to hold the election that failed. But my Horn Award goes to Joe Howry and Tim Gallagher of the Star. You know, Joe Howry comes down for jury duty, and then he goes and writes a big, long opinion article. Joe Howry, come on down. Well, won't you ever come down here to the Board of Supervisors? This where the action is. Showing up for jury duty instills pride in the system. Why, that biggest phony, he's the biggest newspaper phony I ever seen. Here's Tim Gallagher. They criticized the Santa Barbara News Press for letting the publisher print these editorials. Well, this is Tim Gallagher, the publisher. Listen what he says. Longtime chairman of E.W. Scripps championed First Amendment. Well, I'll be darned if you talk about garbage. Poor Paul Revere, that guy. Now, this is really the Horn Award. This is the city of Ventura that's going to turn Victoria Avenue back into 2 lanes and call it a walking place right here next to the county government center? Why, let's get that bull and horn them. That's the most ridiculous. And then Bill Fulton. Does he work for the county planning department? Oh, that's the yellow light. I got some more items. 17 seconds? Gosh! Gotta hurry.
All right, thank you. At this point, then, we're finished with public comments. We'll go to board comments. And how about we start on the left and work our way to the right? Supervisor Flynn?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Mark Reagan's an MD from Westlake, I think, but he spoke with several people yesterday from behavioral health, from the Department of Behavioral Health. And let me just go through the 7 issues that he raised, and then I have a comment to make. He said, we're not going to focus just on treating illnesses, but on building lives. We're going to build on the reality of recovery. We're going to integrate substance abuse treatment into all of our programs. And 4, we're going to build specialized programs to work with transitional age youth. And 5, we're going to target highly problematic people for intensive assistance. 6, we're going to openly hire substantial numbers of people with mental illness. And 7, we're going to actively work in our communities to make them more welcoming. Now, some of these items that are listed, and I read to you, what we're doing, I think we need to improve, though. We always need to improve. There's one here that I hope that we're open to doing more of, and that's number 6 that I read. We're going to openly hire substantial numbers of people with mental illness. I hope we can open our employment market up wider than it is so that we can give people a real place in our society so they feel useful. And I think that would be part of the recovery. My comment and question is this: which ones of these are we doing now well? And then my comment would be, I hope that our staff will work with the Mental Health Board in achieving these 7 items. And if we could get a report back on that, Mr. Johnson, from Linda Shulman, I would appreciate it.
And you had no closing in honor of today? Not yet. Okay. Supervisor Bennett, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to ask the board to adjourn in memory of the people on this list. I'd like to call out one person, Leo Robbins. He was a pioneer in the youth sailing instruction here in the city of Ventura. He began the city of Ventura's award-winning program in teaching youth to sail. Started that back in 1972 with 5 small boats and 6 students. And today the program has 27 boats, 6 kayaks, and has had thousands of students, including somebody who raced on the America's Cup program, one of his students, and so he'll certainly be missed in the city of Ventura. So I'd like to ask the board to adjourn in memory of him and the other people on this list. Just for the benefit of the public, the Ojai Library will be celebrating Dr. Zeus's birthday at 6:30 on Thursday, March 1. We've got Longfellow and Dr. Seuss and great literature. There's great literature out there. So children can sit and listen to story time or participate in making crafts, etc. And the library is located at 111 East Ojai Avenue for anybody who is listening and interested in that. Also, it's a real pleasure to announce that we have now completed the opening of our outreach centers for enrolling children in the various insurance programs that are out there, primarily in the Healthy Families program that's funded by the state and the federal government. But on Monday, we opened up the Oxnard Center after opening up a center in Santa Paula, Simi Valley, and Ventura. We started opening all those in November of 2005, and so far over 2,500 children have been enrolled in some kind of health care coverage, and the goal of this board has been to try to get everybody, all children, covered, and certainly that's remarkable progress on the part of staff in a little bit more than 16 months to reach out to 2,500 children in Santa Paula, Simi Valley, Ventura, and now the Oxnard Center. And I think with the Oxnard Center out there, Public Health and Human Service Agency staff will be dramatically increasing their outreach. The final thing that I would just point out is I know we're all very interested in what is happening at the state level in terms of insurance, and I'd point out that Senator Sheila Kuehl has reintroduced her universal health care bill that that passed through the legislature last year and was not signed by the governor. It certainly will have some significant opposition. I just want to highlight it to highlight the fact that health care in this country is broken, and it's going to take some fairly dramatic moves, whether it's this or something else, but it's going to take some fairly dramatic moves. This effort will be, I think, strongly opposed by the insurance companies. As I talk to my physician friends, they keep reminding me that it is the insurance companies that are at the top of the food chain and seem to be the ones that benefit from the current broken system more than anybody else, and seem to be the ones that most oppose changes. So it's something that I think we'll all want to pay careful attention to as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Supervisor Foy?
Yes, I'd like to adjourn these people in the district and talk about this real quick. Two of young kids, 13 and 18, tragically killed, one on the road, one on a motorcycle accident. Sorry to give up those kind of things. So that's all I have.
Thank you. One was the off-road motorcycle, too. So sorry to hear. I had a couple of things that I wanted to mention. Yesterday was a historic meeting of both the Alcohol, Drug, and Advisory Board with the Mental Health Board. We put them together and had a meeting and looking at forming a subcommittee on dual diagnosis, because we find that somewhere in the neighborhood of 70% of everyone with mental illness also has a drug or alcohol addiction problem, and that is pretty concerning. And right now our county is looking at a way to address this because it is increasing, and we're particularly seeing a lot of methamphetamine use too. So I think that's a real proactive, positive thing to be able to put together a subcommittee and look at this major issue. We also had some good news on the Mental Health Board, and I should let Linda Shulman announce it, but we'll probably hear from her next week. But apparently the Proposition 63, which brings in money from people who are millionaires, they have found that there are more millionaires than they expected, so our county is going to end up with an additional $2.4 million to the Mental Health Services Act. So that's good, and that will help us to complete some of the programs that we're looking at filling. Also, I wanted to give my compliments to our judiciary here. We have another mock trial going on with all the different high schools around, and tonight will be a second part of it, and then we'll go from there to finals. But it's so nice that the judges, who are very busy individuals, donate their time and for this program, as well as many of the attorneys in our county, both defense and prosecuting attorneys, assisting and coaching these kids. And hopefully the Parks team will persevere this year. With that, then, I think that completes our public comments, and we'll go now to our regular agenda items.
So your son is participating?
Yes, I had a daughter last time. This time we've got the son, so we'll see. Okay. He's a witness, and already the judge said he looked very guilty.
Does it run in the family?
Madam Chair, I neglected to ask that we adjourn in memory of this list, which I submit to the clerk.
Thank you, and thanks for reminding me too, and I am going to do likewise. Okay, and we'll go to our regular items then, and our first agenda item is item number 36, I believe, and that is the Department of Airports, and this one is the one that had the revised memo.
I don't remember if it was revised or not, but I think that was actually 46 or 39. 40. Okay, sorry. A lot of numbers out there. Good morning, Madam Chair, fellow supervisors. Todd McNamee, Director of Airports for the county. This is our 5-year capital improvement plan for the 2 airports, Camarillo and Oxnard. Airside improvements that are grant eligible from the federal government, and also with an element of state match. We do ask that you approve the 5-year plan, and also that you allow the Director of Airports to apply for the grants over the next 2 fiscal years, federal fiscal years, 08 and 09. Just because of the timing of their fiscal year compared to ours, sometimes it gets difficult in timing, and this sort of allows us to move forward. Of course, this is all subject to our county budget process and also available funds from the FAA and Caltrans. We have a brief presentation. If you'd like to see that, I'll leave that up to you. But that's the staff report.
Is the board desirous of a presentation? Not seeing any.
As the board knows, the Oxnard has an airport authority, as does Camarillo, and we reviewed these presentations very carefully.
Thank you. Okay, then do we have a motion? Motion to approve and a second. Seeing no objections, then that passes. And we'll move on to another item for you, item 37.
Thank you. This is the Southern California Regional Airport Authority. As you can see in your packet, it was formed in 1985, primarily with LAX, Los Angeles World Airports, as the primary member. Always the goal to sort of decentralize the demand and capacity issues relative to passenger and cargo. And it went dormant in 1992, primarily because of the nature of the powers that this JPA had. They could actually exercise eminent domain on member airports, take over the airport, and then operate that airport on behalf of the SCRA, as it's affectionately named. They're looking at, well, they've actually reconstituted it late last year, so it's active again, and City Council member Bill Rosendahl is the chair. Supervisor Gary Ovitz from San Bernardino is the vice chair. This is the Los Angeles Mayor Viragosa's doing as part of a settlement agreement with surrounding cities. They were suing over the LAX master plan, and some of the developments showed there they needed to show an element of trying to push some of this demand out of their neighborhood. And so they have Ontario, John Wayne, Burbank, and those airports looking at this. Council member Rosendahl is looking to make this all-inclusive. We participate in the Southern California Association of Governments region for planning when it comes to air transportation, also ground access. So they're actually trying to include San Diego up as far as Santa Barbara. And I think as they're trying to redefine what the SCRA will be, the mission, role, power, etc., we're not looking to become members right now. What we're looking to do is have a voice in that process so we can make sure that our airport, Oxnard, which provides commercial service to the county, is protected as they try and decentralize this demand out of LA Basin. We took this through the Commission Authority. They think it's wise to have a voice and an ear in this process as they redefine. I think it's appropriate, since Supervisor Flynn, the airport falls in his district and he sits on Airport Authority, that he be the member representing, but I certainly leave that decision to your board. But that is the staff report.
Thank you. Supervisor Flynn?
Madam Chair, if you look at the letter to the board on page 2, there's some real astonishing things in this list. One of them is, let me read it to you. Develop, construct, acquire, operate, contract for, repair, transfer, maintain, manage, lease, and administer general aviation and commercial air carrier airports and related facilities. We hope to change that. That means that this authority, if you will, can come in and take over an airport. That's the extreme of it. And then in this case it'd be the Oxnard Airport, because if this were to happen, because Oxnard is the only airport in our county that provides commercial air service, passenger service. So we want to adjust these various agreements that are listed here, and I'm just not satisfied with them, nor was anyone on the Airport Authority satisfied with them. So we need to change those. The only way we're going to do that is to go first and listen to see what's going on and see what the goals are, and see if we can't change some of these. Am I accurate in my explanation?
You are. This is a common feeling meant by all the counties surrounding the LA area. Basically, the SCRA is looking to redefine itself, take away these powers, and it's yet to be determined what the JPA will become, because we already have a regional planning agency through SCAG, so maybe the two will complement each other. But it's really, I think, a forum for communication for the region to talk about what's going on with ground access, goods movement, and air transportation. That's the goal, I think.
It did give me concern to read this. It does have the eminent domain in there, also acquiring property, But I did note also that it would have, allow for the jurisdiction where that might occur to have the veto power over such a
Yes.
act.
And they're looking at taking away that's the main power they're looking to do away with completely within the JPA.
And it also gave me concern because I see this as looking to Ventura County as a potential solution to the overcrowding at LAX. And that gives me concern, except that there are other options besides going to our airport, which, for example, which would be helping in the transportation if we get light rail or some other way of getting to other outreached airports, so looking at Palmdale too. But this did give me concern because I didn't want to speak the solution, have Oxnard Airport be the solution. But I do support Supervisor Flynn if he's willing to be that representative.
Okay.
So is there any other comments on this?
I'd move the recommended action.
Okay. We have a motion, and Supervisor Foy
Let me just say, add to your comments, they're very good. The word decentralization is heavy here, and LAX just has not kept up with improvements to handle the traffic. So this is really coming out of that experience down in Los Angeles to decentralize and spread out the services.
If I might also, in recommendation number 2, they're actually looking for written input prior to their next meeting. I would suggest that we do something that's consistent with SCAG's response, which is your attachment C in your packet. Also in that is a closer look at making this an MOU rather than a JPA, since they're looking at taking away the powers anyways. So that may work for everybody as well. That can come out of my office or certainly the CEO's office. It's up to however you'd like to see that happen, but we need to respond by March 1st.
Thank you. And we'll let the CEO's office make that determination then where it comes from.
That's fine.
Okay, then we'll have it come from the airports. Good. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the recommendations. And seeing no objection to that, then that passes. And thank you for the report.
Thank you.
And go get them, Supervisor Flynn. Our next item on the agenda then is item number 38, and this is regarding our child welfare services. Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnston, Judy Rivera for the Human Services Agency. Today we're asking for your board's approval of our system improvement plan. It covers the time period from 2007 to 2010. The SIP today being presented to your board represents a collaboration with probation agency. Which is the second time that we've done a system improvement plan. It's the first time that we've incorporated the probation agency with us, and we are very pleased with that partnership. It is geared to improve outcomes for children and families as required by Assembly Bill 636, the Child Welfare Outcomes and Accountability Act of 2001. Every 3 years, counties must complete a 3-pronged self-evaluation. The 3 parts of that evaluation include a peer quality case review, which provides counties the opportunity to collect qualitative information on business practices that impact outcomes. The self-assessment focuses on quantitative analysis of the outcome measures mandated by Assembly Bill 636, and the System Improvement Plan, or SIP, uses the information collected in both the PQCR and the self-assessment to create a work plan for improving performance. The SIP before your board today targets 7 outcomes that will be addressed by Child and Family Services and probation over the next 3 years. We will work to decrease the recurrence of abuse and neglect for children, increase placement stability for children, increase the use of relative homes, speed reunification of first entering children to probation supervised placements, facilitate adoption within 24 months of entry into the child welfare system, decrease reentry rates, and increase the rate at which siblings are placed together in child welfare supervised placements. All of our efforts centered on 3 main outcomes for children in the areas of safety, permanence, and well-being. There is a total of 26 outcomes altogether. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions on this item or a motion?
I don't have questions. I just think we ought to take this opportunity to point out how complicated and vulnerable this whole system is. I mean, when you're dealing with these children and in this situation, there are many different ways that problems can crop up, and the agency sort of has to be ready to improve in all of these different areas. And so I think we just ought to have a healthy respect for the complexity and the challenge of the task ahead of staff as we try to do this. And it is one of the high-risk areas that all of our 58 counties deal with all the time, and I compliment our staff for doing a real professional job, and at the same time recognize we're going to keep having areas where we're going to stub our toe. So I'd move the recommended action.
Thank you. Supervisor Floyd?
Can I just make one question? You had one of these things about trying to keep siblings together in placement. Is that a big task? I mean, I think it's very important when you keep families together. There's no questions about that. But
You asked, is it a big?
It's a real big task to do, to find that?
Yes, it is. It is for a number of reasons. I think first and foremost, there's an issue of space with foster families, and many times foster families may already have 1 or 2 placements, so it makes it difficult for them to take an additional sibling group of 4 or 5 kids together. We look for resources, and we have now a realtor group that is looking to help us, along with the Lions Club, in sponsoring a home that would allow us to place sibling groups together specifically. Other issues that impact that have to do with the different needs of various children. Sometimes children have medical needs that require special attention, and so that sometimes precludes them from being placed with their siblings. So complex, case-by-case basis, but it is an issue, and it is a difficult issue to address.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's also good to see teamwork between our agencies, too, on this. So we do have a motion, then?
And a second.
And a second.
Supervisor Flynn.
And seeing no objection, then that passes. Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Item 39 has been pulled, so we'll go to item 40. And this is with the County Executive Office. Are you going to do this?
As part of the follow-up that we've been doing with the Guardian's Office, our offices and the county council met with the various departments that are involved, such as the public defender and the treasurer guardian or administrator guardian, and it was concluded that the system for many years operated reasonably well until it didn't. But one of the things that became clear was the accountability or the responsibility placed in one area. It was instead dispersed, and so our recommendation to you, with the cooperation and agreement of the departments, most significantly the county council, is that we believe that the system or the prevention of future issues in this area would be best resolved by placing the responsibility in one place. All but about, I think, Ventura and one other county, and I don't know what the one other county is, but out of the 58 counties, they all use the county council's office, and we had kind of a mixture. So if your board concurs with this, county council will take on that responsibility. They'll continue working with the other departments for a transition and coordination, how best to do this. And then at budget time, we'll come back with workload indicators and what it is that it's going to take to make this all function properly. But in the meantime, it will be coped with by my office and county council.
Move the recommended action.
We have a motion and a second.
I think your recommendation is a good one. The LPS Act is really far-reaching when it deals and acknowledges the problems of the mentally ill.
And thank you for taking it on. We have a motion and a second, and seeing no objection, that passes. Our next item on the agenda, then, we have time, I think, for one more, which is item 41 with the District Attorney's Office.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnson. This is an item for your approval to accept funding for the Gang Violence Suppression Project in and around the city of Oxnard. We've got a prosecutor sign. We've had one for quite a while. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Move the item.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. And seeing no objections, and with our appreciation, that thing is passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Looks like that was such a quick report. Looks like we do have time, if General Services Agency is here, to give us a report on the hybrid vehicles.
Madam Chair, my presentation will take a number of minutes, if that's okay for me to go through it. Okay. Try to get through this quickly. I don't seem to be in a hurry when I get up here.
If you would like to be able to take your time, we could wait, but we'll probably
I think I can make it through this pretty quickly. It's the briefing that I'm going to show you here today is basically follows the board letter that's in front of you, but I'll go through these. This is, I do have the pleasure of taking you through our annual report from Fleet Services on hybrid and other technologies that we're employing in fleet services. Three things I'll talk about are what we look like today in our fleet, our status of technology and strategies. Our snapshot, I'd like to take us back quickly to 2002 when your board approved a new policy to purchase hybrid vehicles. And from that standing start in 2002, we now have, or at the end of the fiscal year, we'll have 61 hybrid sedans, 14 hybrid SUVs, and we also have 13 compressed natural gas vehicles in our inventory. We have converted to ultra-low sulfur diesel, and we're on track to meet the new diesel emission rules going into effect in 2007. Last month, we did have the pleasure of accepting our 50th hybrid sedan, the 2007 Honda Civic. We all know about EPA mileages, but this is what we have actually observed in the fleet operations is in our hybrid sedans, the Civic about 40 miles per gallon, Prius 49, SUVs, the Ford Escape SUV, mini SUV, 32 and 27 for two-wheel and four-wheel drive respectively. And the important part, I think, is to look at, since that policy was implemented in 2002, the county has saved about 20,000 gallons of gasoline and avoided the emissions of 194 tons of carbon dioxide. Yes, sir.
I have one question for you. Since Priuses are getting better gas mileage, why would do the Civics cost less?
The cost is really not the factor there. We have certain customers that prefer the styling on the Civic because they need to go out into the community, and we try to adhere to our customers' desires as well as so we do have a mix of the vehicles.
Okay. May I just make a comment?
Yes, sir.
The Prius, in order to achieve 49 miles per gallon, you really have to treat that accelerator very gingerly. It's true. Almost like you need to learn how to operate the Prius in order to achieve 49. If you drive it like you did 10 years ago, a regular car, it's going to get about 40. But just the commenting on the style and so forth, my daughter-in-law says I look pretty odd driving a Prius.
No comment, sir. I think Johnny has the record on miles per gallon when he had his Prius, so he's our superstar there.
My wife says I do too, and she likes it that way.
You owe me
As they
1%.
say, they're not chick magnets, John.
I tend to look strange in any car, but
I set you up for that one, didn't I?
moving toward our in status of technology, the hybrids do offer what we consider to be the best mix of fuel economy, emission reduction, life cycle cost, and mature technology. Practical use of engine size and power, and I'll give you a quick example. The Honda Civic standard model has a 1.8 liter four-cylinder engine. The hybrid has a 1.3 liter engine and gets more horsepower as a combination of the electric and gasoline power. So no additional infrastructure required. The downside is, of course, the additional cost, upfront cost of purchasing the hybrid. And also, although these vehicles are still under warranty, Fleet Services has not seen any undue maintenance issues arise from our hybrid vehicles. So they're doing just fine as far as maintenance.
Paul, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yes, sir.
I noticed you wrote in here that the cost analysis of initial purchase price and fuel shows the hybrid vehicles continue to cost more to operate over the life cycle than gasoline powered. So we know it's more expensive, and it's hard to make up economy ones, right?
Right.
Is there a? I mean, we all want to try to reduce emissions, but do we know how much more it costs us? I mean, is it just a little bit, or is it quite a bit?
We do have a cost analysis that we can
I mean,
provide to
I
your
was just
board.
curious, because I've heard some other people start to do that cost now, so I was looking at buying the Prius, but I realized that it's going to
What
cost
we were looking to do
$5,000 more
is,
over a period or something like that.
If we're at the break even or
And
better.
it's not a chick magnet, yeah, that's true.
Break even or better, we're gonna go with the hybrid, or if it's close, and if it's not, we won't. With the compacts, the difference is sizable. It's not close. But as I will show you here, we do have a strategy for our compacts.
And if I could, just Supervisor Foy, just to make sure that for the general public that there's no confusion, our policy is that when we have a sedan, that we replace the sedan with a hybrid, but that if a compact can work, we're actually still buying the compact because the compact is more cost effective.
Right.
So our hybrid policy doesn't call for buying hybrids instead of compacts. We still buy the compacts because of the analysis, and then we buy the hybrids only where we were looking to buy a sedan. We won't buy new sedans, we buy hybrids instead of new sedans.
Then to do that, it seems like
For the midsize, it's right. For the life cycle, it's fairly clear. The case is clear that we'll do better with the hybrid over the life cycle of a vehicle. Plug-in hybrids, we do not have any of these yet, but we're watching this technology as one that's very promising. This will be a vehicle that has the ability to recharge from a standard outlet. Will give you extended driving distances on battery power, so essentially this will become an electric vehicle that has a gasoline engine backup for short runs. Battery technology is obviously key to this, and again, promising over the next few years as they get introduced. This one we hadn't talked about before, but we're going to kind of move from fuel economy to emissions reduction with the introduction of our partial zero emission vehicle. We're looking at this technology really to replace our compacts, as I'll point out in a moment. But this is it's completely compatible with fleet use. This is a gasoline engine. It just is the cleanest mass-produced gasoline vehicle available. It's available now, and as you see, the spectrum from low-emission vehicle, ultra-low, super ultra-low, partial zero, and then zero being an electric vehicle that emits nothing. But PZEV, or partial zero emission vehicle, and then AT, which is advanced technology, which are our hybrids, and actually our compressed natural gas vehicles are also advanced technology, PZEV. So this is a technology that's here. What is it? It's really a category of vehicle within the state of California. It meets the super ultra-low vehicle requirements, plus it emits nothing from the evaporative process, and also carries a 15-year or 150,000-mile warranty on emission control components. This chart really points out what the value of moving to PZEVs is. This is a 1976 new car, so driven 15,000 miles. What this chart says is that car would have put out 200 pounds of hydrocarbons and nitrous oxide emissions. In 86, that would have dropped to about 65. 96, about 40. A new car today, we're in the 4 to 5 range, but a PZEV is down about 1. So pretty good. And just to read this little bumper sticker here, it says, a new PZEV is so clean, it would take 330 of them running at the same time to equal the smog-forming emissions of a typical 1971 car, which were the first emission control vehicles in California.
And if I could, Mr. Grosswald, so it's great in terms of smog-forming emissions.
That's correct.
It still has a CO2. It still is.
It does put out CO2, which is one of, as you know, of the
greenhouse gases.
Of the greenhouse gases. When you burn a gallon of gasoline, it's going to put out a certain amount of CO2 no matter what you do. So the gain there is when you have an efficient vehicle, it becomes how much CO2 you're putting out per mile driven. These are, by definition, very efficient vehicles. They're going to be compacts for the most part. But yes, they do continue to put out.
I think this is great. I just didn't want people to think that there would not be any.
But nitrous oxide is also a greenhouse gas, as are water vapor and methane and some other things, as you know. Biodiesel, we are continuing to look at that, and actually are going to look at a pilot study here very soon. But it's a diesel equivalent fuel from biological sources. and it can be burned in our diesel vehicles either in pure form or B100 or blended with petroleum diesel. And as I mentioned, it is compatible with our vehicles. And the gain here is a substantial reduction of nearly all diesel emissions and no sulfur emissions. Ultra-low sulfur diesel, this was mandated to go into effect in October. We are burning this in all our diesel vehicles. In fact, we were several months ahead of the curve. Burning the lower sulfur diesel also facilitates some new technologies, including particulate traps and catalytic converters that in combination really give you the benefit of the ultra-low sulfur diesel. And we're on track to either retrofit or eliminate some of the older diesels from our inventory as we go forward. Ethanol is something we're looking at, but it's really not ready, we think, for prime time. It's currently in our gasoline up to about 10% blends, but we're talking about E85 or 85% ethanol, which is what's in the press talked about mostly. It cannot be burned. E85 cannot be burned in traditional gasoline engines and requires a special configuration, which is available in something called a flexible fuel or FFV vehicle. Feedstocks are still a problem. High per gallon costs are still a problem. Availability is still a problem, and reduced fuel economy. But this is something that's obviously on the agenda nationally, so we continue to watch it. Compressed natural gas is one. We have 13 vehicles in the inventory. Unfortunately, there's a declining number of refueling stations for CNG, and so we don't plan to buy any more of those. So our fleet priorities, just to cover those in a moment, are reduce emissions, increase fuel economy, lead in our sustainability practices in our shop, and also, although it's outside the scope of this brief, minimize operating costs as well. So just to take you through our strategies, compacts are still well below the cost of hybrids, so we're not going to replace those with hybrids, at least not in the near future. But we are going to replace these next 16 over the next budget cycle with PZEV equivalent compacts, and that will be the result if we do that. So from about 480 pounds per year for those 16 vehicles, we'll be going down to about 16. For our mid-size vehicles, for those that we can replace with hybrids, we will, because the life cycle dictates that the economics works out. We have about 25 mid-size over the next year, and we will replace those with hybrids, or where hybrids don't meet our customers' requirements, we will replace with PZEV, which will be transparent to the operator, but it will accomplish this. And by the way, a hybrid is, as I mentioned earlier, a PZEV vehicle. So we're talking 752 pounds down to 25 pounds of hydrocarbon and nitrous oxide.
Mr. Driscoll, while you're on the slide and you're talking about where hybrids don't meet performance criteria, I just hope you'd communicate to all of those people that are concerned about hybrids meeting performance criteria. And it's very legitimate, and they have to make their decisions. But you just communicated that you actually have more horsepower with the hybrid than you do with the standard engine. You have more pickup with it. And so I just hope you'll communicate those things so that they may be able to
I agree.
accurately analyze whether maybe some old thinking had people think that it did not meet performance requirements, and maybe the new hybrids do.
Completely agree. I think education of the user has to be part of this. Obviously, the black and white units do not come in a hybrid, and so we have some 190 of those. But the others, I think, we'll do the best we can at selling the technology. Biodiesel, we're about to, as I mentioned earlier, stand up a little field test where we're just getting through the permitting process of the tanks, and we're going to start putting those in our vehicles.
May I just suggest there is a distributor in the county of biodiesel. Along with that, though, is an additive. And the additive and the biodiesel improve the mileage considerably, according to some people who've used it. So if you need information on that, I can put you in contact with the distributor.
Okay, we actually know about that distributor, and also I think if it's the same additive, we're aware of that and are looking at that as well. So looking to make strides in biodiesel. So just to sort of wrap up where the technology is taking us, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, PZEVs, all within, and if our game plan is as these become available over the next few years, we'll start to replace the original hybrids as they come out of service. So I think the timing may work out pretty well on that. Biodiesel, yes. Ethanol, we're in a wait and see on the ethanol, and also on the CNG. We're not going to procure any additional vehicles, and they will sort of leave at the inventory with attrition. A word about sustainability practices, and our fleet services folks are very proud of what they do here. We recycle motor oil, antifreeze, all other oils and fluids that we can at the shop. Re-refined motor oil is used in our fleet. We've used 5,000 gallons in 05-06, and just a little math that I looked up before I came in, it takes about 84 gallons of crude oil to yield 1 gallon of motor oil. Now, caveat that by saying there are other products formed when you refine the crude, but you kind of see the economics of using the re-refined oil. It takes about 1.4 gallons of wet used oil to produce 1 gallon of re-refined oil, and the quality is equal to or better than the virgin oil. So we'll continue to do that. And we also put in specialized paint guns and aqueous water-based parts cleaners to operate a more green shop. Finally, right-sizing the fleet is important, and you notice that key is in the OFF position, and we think that's got to be part of our conservation program, is to be a little smarter about how we schedule our runs and maybe combine trips and that sort of thing, and look at technology to help us there. And as you pointed out, Supervisor Bennett, education of the users. With that, that's our great folks over at Fleet Services, and subject to your questions, that's all I have today.
In front of your new building.
That's correct.
Supervisor Bennett?
I'd like to make the motion to receive and file, and add to that just a comment. Since 2002, it's just real satisfying to get these annual reports and to see the progress made. And what I think I'm particularly impressed with, being there when you rolled out the 50th hybrid a while ago, is there really is a sense of mission that is there at GSA about trying to really make progress in this area. So it's not just sort of, well, we have to do this because the board, passed a resolution back in 2002, but people really seem to own this, and I really welcome that, and I think that's what's going to really keep our eyes open to lots of improvements that we just wouldn't be able to monitor from this level. So my congratulations to you and everybody else at GSA for taking that great leadership. So I move the recommended action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Supervisor
Your presentation was excellent. I really liked what you said. It's a document, if you will, where the future is now. I just remarked to our county council some of the words up there we didn't use 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. So it's really an environmental advance, I think. Thank you for your presentation.
Supervisor Foy?
I don't want to drag this on, so how do we compare to other counties?
Well, that's a good question. I meet fairly regularly with my opposite numbers at some of the other counties. Some are really leaning forward. I think Solano County is one that comes to mind, and there are a number of others. Others are, not any, really haven't started. I would say we're probably in the 85th percentile. I think we're doing pretty well, but there's obviously room for improvement.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. Yes, Mr. Johnson.
And I would add that is the new building, no debt service, fully paid, not by the taxpayers.
Thank you. So there is good things about development.
Did Mr. Fasciano?
No, that's a conservative economic announcement.
Well, we haven't We haven't been able to do hybrid fire engines yet, but who knows what the future will hold. Our next item on the agenda is a special presentation on the Muscular Dystrophy Association Firefighter Appreciation Weeks. And I believe we have firefighter Steve Kaufman and Charlotte Albert here with the Muscular Dystrophy Association and others. I'm going to come down there and present this resolution to you and be there in a second. Resolution by the Board of Supervisors of Ventura County proclaiming February 12th through the 23rd, 2000 Muscular Dystrophy Association Firefighter Appreciation Weeks. Whereas firefighters have long been America's heroes, risking their lives daily for the safety of the citizens of this nation, and whereas firefighters have been working with the Muscular Dystrophy Association for over 50 years in the fight against neuromuscular disease, raising millions of dollars throughout the county in support of the Muscular Dystrophy Association's many causes, and whereas our local firefighters contribute greatly to the well-being of all citizens through their daily service, safeguarding life and property in our communities, and in their sincere dedication to the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And whereas in honor of the efforts and sacrifices of firefighters, the Muscular Dystrophy Association is sponsoring Firefighter Appreciation Weeks, February 12th through 23rd, 2007, and encourages all Americans to join MDA in extending our gratitude to all firefighters for their dedication, skill, and caring. And it reads now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ventura County Board of Supervisors takes great pleasure in honoring Ventura County firefighters for their service to the people of the county and their committed support of the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and hereby proclaims February 12th through 23rd, 2007 Muscular Dystrophy Association Firefighter Appreciation Weeks. And it's a good opportunity to give to MDA too. Thank you very much for coming. I'll present you with this resolution, and if you'd like to speak, thank you for your work.
I've got a picture.
Thank you. Carol Dean wants a picture. And we can see this on his website, no doubt. If you'd like to.
I just want to say I have a 14-year-old little boy that has muscular dystrophy, and every year when he goes to summer camp, he knows that it's because you guys are out there helping raise the money. And if you guys see them out there in the street with their boots, I mean literally in the middle of the street, put $1 in there, put the change in there. They do this every year. You said you guys raised $26,000 in the county this year, so we really appreciate all of you guys do for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, Madam Chair, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Steve Kaufman. I'm a firefighter for the County Fire Department, and I'm also the Vice President of our Firefighters Association in charge of all our charity activities. Today I have Engine Company 26 out of Saticoy, Captain Salas, Engineer Ornalis, and Firefighter Flitt. And it really is a privilege, number one, to serve the citizens of this county as firefighters. And we take it very, very seriously. But it's also a privilege for all 400 of us to be involved with muscular dystrophy. Like Supervisor Park said, firefighters across the nation have been involved with MDA for well over 50 years. And in that 50 years, we've raised over $200 million for Jerry's Kids and muscular dystrophy. And it's a partnership that we take very seriously, and we're very proud of our loyalty to MDA over those years. This past year, like was mentioned, we raised $26,000 here in Ventura County, and that money is going to stay in the Tri-Counties area to be used for muscular dystrophy and neuromuscular diseases. We had 3 locations, one in Simi Valley, which is our most successful location on the corner of Sycamore and Cochran. We also did the Christmas parade in Camarillo this year, and that was very successful, and then Ojai at the Y. And generally, you know, the reception is absolutely incredible, and we are really, really humbled by the generosity of the citizens of this county. So on behalf of the fire department and the firefighters, we want to thank everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. If they weren't volunteering their time and standing out there with a booth, the funds wouldn't be there. So thank you so much for volunteering your time for that. We have another item on our special 9:30 presentation, and this is National Parent Leadership Month. And I see some national parents here. Would you like to come down and let me read this resolution to you? This proclaims February 2007 National Parent Leadership Month. And it says, whereas meaningful parent leadership occurs when parents gain the knowledge and skills necessary to function in meaningful relationships and present a parent voice to help shape the direction of their families, programs, and communities. And whereas parent leadership is an essential and effective means of strengthening families and preventing child abuse. And whereas Parents Anonymous Incorporated has created National Parent Leadership Month to recognize the extraordinary courage and tenacity of parents who have reached out to make improvements in their families and communities. And whereas the Ventura County Board of Supervisors recognizes the vital importance of partnering with parents and assist public systems and private organizations, policymakers, and other key stakeholders to effectively implement parent leadership strategies. And whereas parent leadership is a necessary component in any effective family strengthening and family support program. And whereas parent leadership is successfully achieved when parents receive support and training and share responsibility, expertise, and leadership in the planning, implementation, oversight, and evaluations of policies, practices, and programs that affect families and communities. And whereas the power of parents speaking publicly about their experiences made and will continue to make an impact on the lives of families everywhere. And whereas Ventura County Parents with Purpose has for the past 6 years helped to support and strengthen families in need throughout Ventura County, now therefore be resolved that the Ventura County Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim and declare February 2007 National Parent Leadership Month in Ventura County, California, and recommends observance by all of our citizens to be good parents. Congratulations, and would you like to make some comments and introduce yourself?
My name is Leah Davis, and thank you very much. As a parent and an advocate of parents who navigate through the system, what we really want to do is help our parents to be successful and get through this process. Usually at the Juvenile Justice Courthouse, I'm there with the parents in court, helping them, just to at least feel like someone is there supporting them. Our parents, they don't know what to expect. It's a very intimidating process. And so when we're working on an orientation for them now so that we'll be able to give them vision and see where this is going and where it's going to take them, and hopefully to have successful reunification with their families, with their children. Particularly, real quick, what we're working on is the orientation and also
getting into the emergency response.
Emergency response, yes. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
And
Tell me some more what we're doing. We're busy doing a lot.
I'm Elizabeth Humphrey, and I'm the founding member. I've been with this since the inception of this through Parents Anonymous Incorporated, and I'm very humbled to be here accepting this resolution. We're doing a lot to empower the families that we're working with, and we have several families within the community. As you all know, the county's pretty much inundated with drug addiction and alcoholism, and as a result of that, families are being torn apart. So what we get to do is we get to go in and help these families to successfully reunify with their children, which is something that I've done. Over 8 years ago, I went through the process and successfully reunited with my children as a direct result of my treatment with Rainbow Recovery, and that was my foundation. And because of that, I was placed in a position to be a role model for the other parents that are in the community who are having the same struggles. Because as Leah said, when we're in this process, we don't know how to navigate through it. We're intimidated. We're not sure what to do and where to go and how to get through this process to help our families to heal. So I've been placed in an awesome position to be able to help the families in our community to reunite and to have healthy families and healthier community.
Well, thank you for your work.
And I really appreciate that.
Helping those who are in need.
I appreciate your...
Madam Chair, may I just say something? I want to congratulate you for what you're doing. Parenting, parents, and families are the most important part of our whole social structure. And it's the answer, really, the answer to the problems that we have. What you're doing is the answer, in my view.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
And
that.
so much of what the county does do, we had it here today, is trying to keep families together where possible, and all the support that we can get for that. You don't need a certificate to become a parent. Anyone can, but there are definitely some skills to learn, and it's nice to see you advocating and helping.
And just for a brief framework, I'm Lori Steinhardt, I'm the Director of the Ventura County Partnership for Safe Families and Communities, the Child Abuse Prevention Council. And this program is under the auspices of Ventura County Human Services Agency, Children and Family Services. It was part of the Child Welfare Redesign in 2001. I'd like to thank our team, Linda Easterling, one of our founding social workers from the county, Jenny Foot-Foy, one of our team with the partnership, and Laura Manganales. Did I say that right? Who's the supervising social worker from the county on this program. In our foster care trainings through Aspira and elsewhere, I've seen the biggest transformation of foster families, foster parents who are so afraid of birth parents, when these women come and speak to our foster parents and say, look what can be done. Birth parents are people too, and we can be leaders in the community, and it absolutely transforms foster parents to help the kids have the bridge. They're one of the biggest bridges in the system.
Madam Chair, if I could, I would just like to point out how much this actually highlights the point that we made earlier, which is the most complicated thing we deal with is the issue of children and all of those facets out there. And this just is an example of just one more complication. For years in the foster care program, there really was a separation between the foster parent and the biological parent. And a few years ago, it was realized that that gap had to be bridged for the benefit of the child. It was frustrating for the foster parent, but it was much better for the child. And your organization is really helping to make that bridge. And so I want to compliment everybody on the staff and all the volunteers that are making that happen, because that is a critical link that, as much as people wanted to resist that, it's really obvious that it's really been very valuable for kids. So congratulations to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next presentation, 9:30, I believe, is with the District Attorney's Office. If you'd like to come up, I'll go back there.
Well, with only 17 seconds left, the chair would give me some extra time.
No, I will.
I have to support Mr. Foy on item 45.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnson, good morning. We have placed before your board our annual report on the District Attorney Real Estate Fraud Prosecution Program as required by the California Government Code. The report provides you, in essence, with a detailed overview of our work and our many accomplishments since your board originally approved the $2 filing fee funding scheme that supports this program. Ordinarily, as you're well aware, this would be an item on your consent agenda, but we asked to place it on this agenda because we wanted to speak to it, in particular for two reasons. First of all, as you know, the success of this program really depends upon our ability to collaborate with the real estate industry here in Ventura County. And we really, I must say, the industry has embraced us with open arms, and a number of those members of the industry who are part of our real estate fraud awareness team wanted to speak to your board to speak about the program this morning. And then the second reason we placed it on is, as you no doubt have observed, there is a difference between the cost of the program and the revenue that we have received, and I wanted to speak briefly to that issue as well, just to answer any questions you may have. So with the board chair's permission, I'd like at this time, in deference to your full agenda, to call forward the members of the fraud awareness team that I believe have previously filed speakers cards on this issue. They are, just if I could introduce them, Lexi Howard, who is president of the Ventura County Escrow Officers Association and is also a member of the California Escrow Association. Lindsay Nielsen, who is a very active local real estate attorney. Fernie Campos, who is the president of the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, and then Kay Runyon, who manages the government affairs for the Ventura County Realtors Association. So I'd like to turn it over to Lexi. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. I'm Lexi Howard, here today on behalf of the Real Estate Fraud Advisory Team. What is real estate fraud? Do we recognize it when we see it? Does the consumer? Real estate fraud schemes have become a nationwide concern. In Ventura County, the most common victims are senior citizens and those with limited English language skills. The Real Estate Fraud Advisory Team provides an innovative approach to industry outreach and public outreach and information intended to deter and redress real estate fraud in Ventura County. The Real Estate Fraud Advisory Team represents a groundbreaking, multidisciplinary approach. We're composed of realtors, mortgage brokers, appraisers, lenders, title and escrow professionals, and many others. I represent both the Ventura County Escrow Association and the California Escrow Association today on behalf of the Real Estate Fraud Advisory Team. Joining me today are members of the Real Estate Fraud Advisory Team. You'll stand. Thank you. As well as team members. And I'm also pleased to welcome the president of the California Escrow Association, Fran Butler. Thank you, Fran. The work of the team last year includes the production and distribution of a video about predatory lending practices. This was produced in both Spanish and English, and there will be a copy in your packet that's being distributed to you. This video was sponsored in part by the National Association of Realtors, the California Association of Realtors, and the California Escrow Association. This project and future projects illustrate the desire of the Real Estate Fraud Advisory Team, with your blessing, to educate the consumer and reach out both to the public and the industry. And Supervisor Foy, to answer your question in advance, where is Ventura County in comparison to other counties? We are pioneers. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Supervisor Flynn, you have a question?
Oh, they have more presentations.
Yes, they have a few.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Fernando Campos, and I'm actually the chair for the Public Outreach Committee, and I'm here in behalf of the Ventura County Coastal Association of Realtors and past president of the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. But we are extremely happy to announce that we are partnering with Freddie Mac. Freddie Mac is one of America's biggest buyers of home mortgages, and through Freddie Mac's existence, millions of Americans' families benefit from lower mortgage rates, a wide choice of mortgage products, and reduced loan origination fees. At the same time, Freddie Mac is looking to protect their loan portfolios. One of the ways is through their Don't Borrow Trouble campaign. This national award-winning campaign combines education and empowerment by showing consumers how to protect their homes and neighborhoods from predatory practices that strip away their home's equity. Freddie Mac is looking to expand this campaign nationwide. Currently, the city of Los Angeles is the only city involved in Southern California, and there's 3 cities in Northern California. Our committee has contacted members of the media and are preparing to promote this campaign in the local newspapers, real estate magazines, and possibly radio. This campaign will be in Spanish and English to maximize our exposure. In addition, we will have an 800 resource number where the public can call if they have any questions, voice their complaints, or if they suspect fraudulent real estate activities. These calls will be answered by an experienced team member and will be directed to a matrix where the calls will be addressed. By promoting this campaign, our goal is to educate the public as well as the real estate profession, and hopefully eradicate predatory and bad business practices. We look forward to having this campaign in place within the next several months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, members of the board. I'm Lindsay Nielsen. I'm a real estate lawyer with this effort. I want to compliment Greg Totten and Miles Weiss for the effort that's being put into this. We meet more often than I can say with all the professional in the real estate industry meeting in this. We have meetings with 20 people, 25 people representing lenders, everybody. It's our hope to create more efforts to educate the public. Miles has put out a wonderful checklist of 10, hi everybody, 10 warning signs. I think you've probably all refinanced your house. You know how you get that little packet of half-inch documents, and you're just trying to sign it. I don't think any of us have read it. You sign it. You want to get through that process. Well, quite often those are not filled in. And it's a surprise later on when you find out what was written in the blank. So we're trying to educate the public. Your board's support of this effort is very helpful. As I was telling Greg, your measure is going to be difficult to measure how much success, because how many frauds aren't going to be committed because they know this is out there now. So our effort is to publicize this effort, get the bad guys. I know many of us on the committee filter this before we overload the poor district attorney. Not all real estate transactions are fraudulent if they go south. A lot of it's just based on incompetence. So if you can just raise the level of awareness, we'll help the DA. He'll get the bad guys. And then us on the civil side will get the other bad guys. But thank you for your support, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Ms. Runyon?
Good morning. I'm Kay Runyon, Governmental Affairs Director for the Ventura County Coastal Association of Realtors. And I'm really here today to speak on behalf of Jim Keith. He is the co-chair of the Real Estate Fraud Advisory Team, and unfortunately due to a death and his immediate family unable to make it. But there are a couple of key things he really wanted me to say to all of you. He was also here initially when we were encouraging this board, or the 05 board, I guess, to vote in this $2 fee. And one of the things that he would like for me to be sure and get across to you is to congratulate you on your wise decision that was made. And sometimes it's not always easy, but it certainly proved to be very important. As far as this team of advisors, they are way ahead of the curve. Our national association, our state association are very well of what we're doing here, as is the Department of Real Estate. They've also asked that one of their members of the Los Angeles Department of Real Estate sit on our advisory team. So to say that we have expertise, in your packets there is a list of all the people that are involved. It's really not all of the people, because we have these two subcommittees, which is the public outreach and the industry outreach, and we have others who are also concerned about this sitting on those subcommittees. This committee started in May of '06, and they really have accomplished a lot. The other thing I'd like that he wanted me to make sure that you were aware of is that if we'd not had the cooperation of the district attorney's office, I don't think we'd be as far along as we are today, because Miles Weiss, who's the other co-chair of the REFAT, has been out there speaking and educating members of the industry as well as the public, and this is critical. The last thing I'd really like to say is, if you have any suggestions or any ideas of ways that you think that we can reach out, let us know, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just to close things out, Ms. Runyon did provide each of you with a package of materials that include those brochure, the top 10 red flags of real estate fraud, as well as a predatory practices DVD that has been produced really at no expense to the county. And those materials, at least as to the brochures and the top 10 steps, are also available in Spanish and being distributed in Spanish. And so we're really working to outreach to the Spanish-speaking community, because we know they're a target. In terms of the cost issue, our original estimate from the clerk's office in terms of recorded documents that would be subject to the $2 fee, based upon, I believe, a pattern over the last 5 or 6 years prior to that estimate, was that we would have about 185,000, almost 186,000 documents that would be filed annually subject to the $2 fee. That would have produced revenue in the neighborhood of $370,000 annually. We, as everyone has observed, have experienced a little bit of a downturn in the real estate market. With prices escalating so much, house sales went down, and foreclosures went up. Foreclosures are not subject to the $2 fee, and so in reality, what wound up occurring is we had about 141,000, almost 142,000 documents that had the $2 fee assessed. So the actual revenue produced is below what at least we were originally projecting. Now, we're hopeful. We think this downturn is by no means over, but we're hopeful there will be a turnaround in the real estate market and we'll go back to standard levels and those revenues will go up. But also, before your board approved this $2 fee, as we discussed at that time, we were already prosecuting real estate fraud cases, and indeed it was the growth in those cases that caused us to come to your board and ask for this additional fee. And so, to a degree, we were already performing some of the responsibilities that we're performing now as a part of the cost assessment we're attributing to the program. What this $2 fee has really allowed us to do, however, is really step up our efforts. We now have a very experienced and dedicated senior attorney who serves as a prosecutor, and I'd like to introduce him. Miles, would you please stand forward? Stand up. Miles, in addition to being a very talented and capable prosecutor, has the distinction of also being a licensed real estate broker, which has enhanced our credibility with the industry immensely because he really understands some of the business practices that they deal with. We also have a dedicated investigator that works these cases. So we've been able to vertically, as opposed to assembly line, we've been able to handle these vertically. And that's important in the prosecution arena. We've also seen a dramatic growth because we've developed a complaint system and the number of cases that come to our attention. We think more cases are being reported because of our outreach efforts. And as Mr. Nielsen pointed out, we also think the number of crimes that are actually occurring is going down because the industry is on notice. We held an industry-wide program a few months back that had over 300 participants from the industry in it. We also think that this is a program that from time to time will generate new civil prosecutions. Some of the cases we've had in the past have actually been prosecuted criminally and then as unfair business practices. The advantage of that is sometimes it can generate additional revenue for the county, but even more importantly, when we're able to prosecute a company for an unfair business practice, it enhances our ability to get restitution for the victims of these crimes. And in one case, we actually received 100% restitution for every victim we identified that had been preyed upon by these predatory lenders. So in total, we think the program is working. It's working very well. We're proud of it, and we look forward to future successes in the future.
It's nice to see the partnership also, to have the real estate industry in support of the extra cost, but it helps all. When you got full restitution, do you also get funds for the cost of prosecution?
Yes. Part of the statutory scheme that we rely upon in civil as opposed to criminal prosecutions, those small number of cases where we can pursue unfair business practices, the law permits us to also demand payment for the cost of the prosecution.
Mm-hmm. That's good to have, because I know it's costly, but it's wonderful to see this being so effective, and again, appreciate the partnership, the public-private partnership. Supervisor Boyd?
Go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead, Supervisor
Well, I commend you for the effort and people from the industry. Most people in the industry are very honest and forthright, but we need to declare war on real estate fraud. I'm getting more and more cases into my office where people are paying huge upfront costs that they pay, and then if you look at the documents they bring in, huge balloon payments that they did not understand. They're usually people in the country, in California, in our county, who do not speak English. They're the victims. They're the targets. They're targeted like they're a gold mine. And you've got some comments in here like on page 4, the employment, income, and intention of such buyers to occupy homes were misrepresented to the lenders so the buyers could qualify to purchase a home. It just is a significant issue, I'm sure all over the county, but more especially in my district. my compliments to you. When Lindsay Nielsen walked in, I said, "Oh my gosh, we're in trouble." So I compliment you. We really have to take after this.
Thank you.
Supervisor Foy.
Yes, thank you. No, I want to echo those comments too, and there's nothing more important that we, as citizens of a county, a state, that feel comfortable that we can do business and that you're doing the work to make sure that this is being done. I've got some clients in the mortgage banking business who, depend on brokers to bring them loans, and they said the fraud is unbelievable, the things that those people are willing to do to make a buck. And most people are just so anxious to get a home if they have that opportunity. They're not willing to look at this stuff. So I just want to say thank you and for what you're doing, and hopefully we can see that we're going to see the turnaround. You're going to get some more revenue. I know it's there's always a strain on your own budgets all the time to make this happen, and I just appreciate you're still going forward with what you're doing, even though it's really tough on your budget. So thanks so much.
Thank you, and I just do want to be clear. We do not anticipate, I would not want to mislead the board. We don't anticipate that the revenue as it's currently structured, unless the legislature were to increase the amount of the fee.
Because we can't dictate that.
Right.
Right.
We don't anticipate that the revenue is in the foreseeable future going to meet our cost. We think our cost will typically exceed the revenue that we receive. But as I say, those costs were costs we were bearing before we got this program.
Right. So at least you're getting a little bit more money than you were before, and then hopefully because you're out there, you're going to see some of this reduced. But I just always have a tendency as the market gets tighter and people are looking to make loans, they'll start to say things that may be not as true, and hopefully it'll be going down, not up. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming today, too. Our next, actually, we have a motion. Thank you. We have a motion to receive and file, and a second. And seeing no objection, that passes. Thank you for coming. And our next 9:30 time certain is our report from our treasurer, Mr. Matheny.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Mr. Johnston. It's my pleasure to report the Treasury Pool investment results for the month of January, showing that we are holding at 4.75% return through that month, generating about $6.2 million in non-tax revenue for local government. A couple of items that I wanted to particularly address as I was listening to the earlier part of the meeting. I know there was a question from Mr. Williams about the report of receipts and disbursements and the curiosity about how similar the numbers are, whether there's a transposition. Actually, those are accurate numbers for the month of January. We did receive $2.314 billion and dispersed more than that, $2.341 billion. I will comment as to reasons how you can have an anomaly like that. It's easy to forget that the County General Fund is not the only participator in the Treasury pool. We have a significant presence of schools funding that make up the pool balance. And the timing of withdrawals, construction projects that might be going on that would require a drawdown from the fund balance in a particular participating government entity can create this imbalance from one month to the next. Our property tax revenues, of course, are very, very healthy. So that's not the explanation. It's because of the timing of other governmental needs. And I'd also like to address a question that Mr. Foy had concerning looking at this year's balance for the month of January compared to a year ago. One of the charts that is attached would suggest that there's a $100 million difference from year to year. It's actually a result of a rounding methodology that we use. This year's January balance was $1.521 billion. Last year's was a tick over 1.55, so it was rounded to 1.6. So rather than a $100 million difference, the difference is something along the magnitude of about $30 million. And as I looked at some of the major withdrawals,
that would be reflected in that lower amount this year. And it wouldn't just be transactions in the month of January, but in this fiscal year. As an example, I believe that we spent $12 million on a building out of the general fund that came out of it. The pension obligation bonds are higher this year. We've had a couple of special districts that have pulled some money out recently. So it appears, as I looked at it more closely, and I appreciate the heads up, that everything is in order and tracking as we expect it to. We're looking to hit that magic $1 billion property tax revenue mark sometime around April 9th or 10th this year, and we'll get it invested and we'll take care of the money in a safe and secure way. Any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Supervisor Flynn.
You invest under real limits as far as how flexible you can be by state law and state policy. The 4.what%?
4.75.
That's really something, considering all the restraints that you have. Am I correct about the restraints?
Yes, we're limited to fixed income. We're limited by the quality of the issuer. We're limited by the duration of the financial instruments. So all of those things combine to shrink the risk down. We approach this, and your board, of course, adopts on an annual basis the investment policy that we use. We base that by putting the security and the liquidity of the investment as the highest priorities. The yield is down the ladder in terms of our consideration. But I do feel very good about the amount of yield that we are still able to get. If you compare that to a passbook rate at a bank, it's significantly better. It's recent publicity of a local special district that pulled some money out because they felt they could do better. It's not the place for everybody, but for the working capital needs of local government in particular, I think it's an excellent, safe and secure place to get a good return on the money and to be able to access it.
Mm-hmm. And being on a special district that does put their funds in the county pool, at one point they were very concerned that it wasn't making enough and decided to take it out, most of it out, and have a private company invest it. And as it turned out, because of where the market was, lost a few $100,000. I managed to push them enough to get the funds back, but we did do an analysis and found out over a 10-year period the county's pool was just about identical to what the private market would do if they were investing it. So that gave me a lot of confidence, particularly with, as you said, our goals, to make sure we have the liquidity and the security first, which may not be the concerns of other private investment companies. So.
Well, that district will still be under restraints also. Maybe a little more flexible, but still under restraints.
Right.
Mr. Johnson?
Larry, in previous reports you indicated that one of the reasons why our returns, even though they, considering all the restrictions, are good, that you ladder in the investment and that you have some old ones at lower interest rates. Has that pretty much gone through the system now, the 2.5% returns that used to pull down the average?
We have a few odds and ends that are still in the portfolio, but by and large, we are getting much more current rates in the pool now.
So it's not significant anymore.
So that the future increases in the investment return will be, there could be some there, but they're not going to be dramatic. I don't think next year, looking at the pool, we're going to be looking at 5.5%, anything like that, unless there's a significant change in the financial markets. But we have averaged out most of that old money.
I'd like just to add a couple other things just by way of history. Many people maybe have forgotten the experience in Orange County where there were several years where there was quite a bit of bragging going on amongst the investment community that we're doing better in Orange County pool than anybody else, and they ended up having to file bankruptcy when the bubble burst. There were also a couple of municipalities in Southern California going back maybe 15 years ago.
One in Ventura County.
Yeah, one in Ventura County where they nearly wiped out their reserves as a result of some bad investments. So when we read in the paper about people, everybody would like to get the highest yield, but when you get that cold call at home from somebody who says they've got a 17% return and no risk, you should hang the phone up. There is no such thing. In addition to that, the community and the board should be aware that we on a regular basis are evaluated by Standard & Poor's on how we do, and we've had some of the highest ratings available in any local government, have for several years. So those are things to be comforting to us, even if we're not getting that 12% the special district was talking about.
Thank you. You got your answer, Mr. Williams, so I think you're...
Well, Madam Chair, Larry did such a good job answering my question, but if you will extend me some time, I will call.
Thank you, Mr. Matheny, for your report. Do we have a motion to receive?
Move to receive and file.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Seeing no objection, that passes. And our last 9:30 time certain, this is again, finally, the ordinance in Oak Park regarding oversized vehicles. That's for our final approval today. And I'll go ahead and move approval to passing it up. Yeah, well, the ordinance is just saying how long you can stay on the streets. So.
Second.
Motion and a second, and seeing no objections, that passes. Now we can go on to our 10 a.m. time certains, and Mr. Coons is already here, and this is regarding some awards.
Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnston, my pleasure to present Ron Coons, Public Works Director of Ventura County. It's my pleasure to bring this item before you today. We're very proud. American Public Works Association for Ventura County comprises a vast number of private consulting firms, all the cities in the county, a lot of agencies throughout the county itself. Annually, there's competition for 4 categories of projects that we've had this year, and our county has won 3 of those categories for being the top project award. The first category, the Structures Award, that was given for the work that we did with the public-private cooperation project. Turned out quite well for us, the Satakoy Operations Yard. That project internally here in the county was a lot of work also. I have a staff here of maybe if they could all come down and group together. But Steve Williams was my number one go-to man to help coordinate the start of this project, getting all of the agencies and different departments in the county to come together to find out what they would like to have improved over the El Rio facility that we had. We incorporated all that work into a design of a new facility, hired the best consultants we could find, both for the structural and architectural, did the reviews of the private developers' proposals and put the agreements together. Turned out to be quite a beneficial project, about $45 million facility that the county now has. A different part of that is the water well that we have obtained through that agreement. We also turned that over to the city of Ventura for their ownership, operation, and maintenance. And we negotiated a contract with the city of Ventura there for us providing or paying for our water that we get from the city now for 23% of the price of water forever. So that's quite a savings to us each and every month. And the next project is the transportation project. In the city of Ojai, excuse me, I got a cold, I'm drugged down. Not only my voice is going, but my mind's a little weak this morning. Not in Ojai, but out in Piru on the Center Street Bridge. We have a fantastic project that we're able to do out there to improve the safety for the public, pedestrians, bicycles. It's a cantilevered section off the existing bridge, 409 feet long. It's kind of a dream type of a project you'd like to put together for engineering feat. We did all the work from on top of the project bridge so that it wouldn't adversely affect the environment, and that one was done. The project there was about $1.7 million. Another project that we've won an award for is the Emergency Public Works category project. When the February '05 storms came through and tore out part of the runway off the Santa Paula Airport, tore out a lot of the bank of the river, we had the NRCS was looking for Congressman Gallagly, got funding through the NRCS. We worked hard to get that, and we stepped up with the Watershed Protection District staff to put that together as the sponsor of the project. But also so that in the negotiations we were also able to get NRCS money for the Santa Paula Creek for our own benefit, as well as doing the benefit for the Santa Paula Airport. That project had many different participating agencies involved, and it was a very important project for emergency services and for also the economic viability of the city of Santa Paula and the airport there. Also, I want to compliment County Council staff, Dan Murphy. He stepped in there when the Fish and Game was trying to halt our project with protection of the rock riprap on the banks there, and we went to court and got issued a permit from Fish and Game to complete that project. So that was a $5.9 million project that we're also very proud of on how that went. All these people here are the ones that have participated. Chris Cooper, he's project engineer, John Pennington, Steve Williams, this is Linda Pennon, and I want to introduce Joe in a second here. And we have Jess and Teresa and Kurt and Larry, Jeff, and Peter Shade. These people all did an outstanding job. These are the ones that made these projects, these people here. And I also would like to introduce Joe Deacon. He comes from my old stomping grounds in the East Valley. He's vice president for American Public Works Association, and he's the one that brought the goodies here today. So I'd like to introduce Joe.
Thank you, Ron. I just want to echo some of the words that Ron just told you. You do have the right to be very proud of your achievements this last year. Winning 3 out of our 4 awards is unprecedented in the minds of those of us who've been on Ventura County chapter of APWA. And clearly, it was a standout year for the Public Works Agency and for the County of Ventura. Just a quick note on each of the projects. The Setacoy Operations Yard, being a Public Works municipal professional, I'm envious. It's a fantastic facility, efficient, well laid out, modern, attractive. It has all the elements that make a great Public Works facility. The Center Street Bridge, as Ron quipped, I would say the same. We all in civil engineering start out wanting to be bridge designers. We wind up in our different professions, but the opportunity to build a cantilever bridge section is really unique, probably once in a career, or if ever, and the opportunity that you took to do that and to provide for the other functions that Mr. Coons talked about, the pedestrians and bicycles, clearly a great project for your community. And last but certainly not least, the emergency work by the Public Works Agency on the Santa Clara Riverbank Restoration Project. They were also very clear in making note that this was in partnership with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And I believe not only them, but all these projects speak well of the partnerships that the county is making in getting these projects through. And in all, I would just say congratulations for the great work that was done. And I have plaques to commemorate the achievements by for these projects. And Juan, who do you want to get them?
We'll just
Okay, for the Setacoy
pass them
operation.
up here to the board. They can take a look at that.
Okay, Setacoy Operations Yard, Center Street Bridge, and the Santa Clara Riverbank Restoration.
It's wonderful to be recognized for these great achievements. The Setacoy Yard not only turned out beautiful and functional and modern, but the whole agreement behind it so that the county didn't have to pay for it and was able to also work in the water well in there too. I mean, it was just amazing what set that all up, and I really commend not only the the engineering of that, but obviously also the great work that was done behind the scenes to make that all come to be. It's also nice to see, like you were talking about the bridge, to maintain that historic feature too, and that theme. It must have been a challenge, and it sounds like one that was very welcome, but it's nice to see that come about, and using funds with the Transportation Commission and that partnering, and obviously the extra work that had to be done, I think twice on the Santa Paula Airport to keep the bank from being eroded further. So a lot of work and a lot of appreciation. It's nice to be recognized, and sounds like it's historic that we got 3 of the 4 awards. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good work.
Ron, I just make a comment. I was talking to Johnny about this yesterday, and I just impressed. I mean, coming new to this and what you've done in your department, and also what Supervisor Parks talked about, your ability to make that deal that we had talked about before, is just impressive. How you can. A lot of people just wanted to say, county's got money, state got money, just go spend money. But I just want to say thanks for the creative way of doing business. Very much.
I love being here. This is a great place to be, and it's a great place to have your career.
Thank
you. I think the county's
I would like to.
Great to have you.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. I want to commend you also and all the people that you had up front here. It's a very necessary work that you do. You do it well. The people that you have under your direction do it well. And I hope that the representative, he's from SEME, right?
Yes, sir.
I hope you'll be here in about 2 years and give the same kind of presentation for the El Rio Sewer Program.
We're
and how we creatively funded it.
We're in there.
And I don't.
Very much. But these people here, I just surround myself with the best people I can find, and these are examples of those people that just worked on these projects. There's many other staff members that aren't here that weren't able to work on these projects. We try to run lean and mean and keep the best people working on them. And these are just examples of those people. There's a lot more behind them.
It just goes to show good leadership, though. Good leaders always surround themselves, and I don't envy having to fight fishing game.
Thank you.
We can now go on to our next time certain item. Is everybody doing well here? Do you need a 5-minute break? Or okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break and then go to our 10:30 item. Thank you. Okay, we'll come back from our brief recess to our February 27th, 2007 meeting. And this is the item I think we've all been waiting for. It's item 31, and
It's excitement time.
Yes, we're exciting and looking forward to our budget development manual.
Right. Paul Dursey from the County Executive Office. This is our annual request for your board's approval of the budget development manual, which is available online, and there's a real confusing URL there that's in the board letter, but you can just as simply go to our website and punch on publications, and you can find it there. So basically, the board budget development manual is our guidelines for the departments so they can develop their budgets for the 07-08 budget year. It incorporates the internal service funds rates, which we had a presentation on 2 weeks ago. It incorporates those rates, and we're requesting that your board approve those rates for development of this budget at this time. It also outlines the budget calendar for the upcoming year, the overall guidelines. We expect to be back next week with a mid-year report on the current budget year, and then a real brief mid-year report for the current budget year, and then a real broad outlook of next year's budget at what we see at this point in time. The couple of the highlights I'd like to note in the budget development manual: our retirement rates are going up again. The costs are going up. The composite rate went from about 17% of salary up to a little over 19.5%, and based on over a $500 million payroll, that is significant increases for us, about between $12 and $15 million we're expecting increase on retirement rates. Those are just gross numbers, because that doesn't include, money that we would get back through charging fees and reimbursements from the state and federal governments for some of those. But those are just gross numbers. On the good side, oh, by the way, Paul Angelo will be here next week also, as a reminder, to go over some of the impacts of retirement and how retirement pretty much works, and what good news and bad news is out there from a retirement standpoint. On the good side, from our standpoint, our pension obligation bonds are going away. Next year is our last payment, and our payment is half of what this year's payment is. This year payment's about $25 million. We expect that to about cut in half next year, and then the subsequent year it goes down to zero. So that's the good news.
The end of the pension.
That's correct.
Could you just state what that cost is?
It's about $25 million in the current budget year. Next budget year, it's about half of that amount, about $12.5 million we expect it to be. And then the following year, the 08-09 budget year, it's going to be gone.
Yeah, we should point out, that's coincidental, but the increase in the pension costs of about $12 million and the decrease in the pension bonds of about 12 just sort of offset. So it's not as though there's, this is found money. In addition to that, the increase in the cost of your pension plan was not the result of increased benefits. It was the result of what the periodic demographic actuarial reevaluation. And for us as individuals, when we live a long life, that is good news, and from a pension system, that is an actuarial loss, unless you have calculated that long life in advance. So as longevity increases, people are living longer, and in some cases, people are retiring earlier. That may be a trend that will be changed, but in the meantime, that has to be re-evaluated in the numbers to be sure that we're properly funded. And the good news there is we are at 80+% funded on our pension system, and without pension bonds after next year, whereas many of the jurisdictions in California aren't even as fully funded as we are, and in addition to that, they may have $1 billion worth of pension bonds outstanding.
Will our 80%, as the 5-year rolling comes in, where will we be in?
We expect to be up around 90 before.
We would hope to be around 90 within the next 2 years, but that assumes that we are at least earn the actuarial assumption rate. We were hoping that the next budget year our rates would not go up. They would kind of stabilize and maybe even tick down a little bit. But based on this new actuarial information, what they really did was added about 1.5 years to everybody's life. That's a key issue, because if you look at a retiree's payroll of, well, just say, I don't know exactly what the amount is, but the retiree's payroll, if you have 4,000 retirees and you add 1.5 years onto everybody's life from an actuarial standpoint, plus 7,500 current employees, and you make these various assumptions, so a year and a half is significant. It costs, that basically costs about a little over $100 million to our unfunded liability. And that change alone. So, and then that has to be amortized over a 15-year period, which in general would be about a $10 million hit per year for the next 15 years based on those actuarial changes. So that's a significant issue from a retirement standpoint and from a contribution standpoint. But on the good side, we do have what we call excess, the smoothing aspect and non-smooth funds out there, I think in excess of $200 million.
But if the POV bonds were not going away, we'd have this on top.
There'd be a $12 million hit on top.
On top of that, which would be a real.
What assumption rate is retirement?
8%. 8%. And over the last, since inception, they've actually earned in excess of 8%. So I think they've earned about 10% since inception that they've kept track of all those records.
Can I ask one more? With that actuarial change, when does the next actuarial change or review come up?
The actuary, well, they do a yearly actuarial, but the demographic, is every 3 years.
Every 3 years.
Demographic update, correct.
Because I noticed just coming from that business, the ages are growing quicker. I mean, it used to be a long span before we added years like this, so now it's coming much quicker. So.
And when we first started this process, it was probably about 6 years ago, we were actually had some actuarial gains from people dying, whatever it was, as an anomaly in Ventura County. They were dying earlier than
it's a gruesome conversation. Successes.
So with all the changes,
that's not our policy, right?
That's not a
die earlier.
Retirement and a hang gliding.
Yeah, right.
So I guess what I was asking, are we taking in some account for that so we don't get all of a sudden, because we just got dinged pretty hard, right?
Well, no, we don't take that into account. We just do that every 3 years. So there's no way for us to evaluate that particular aspect, because it may go up and may go down. So that in the past it had actually gone down a little bit. The last two times it's gone up. So
okay.
Yeah, let me add one thing to that. When we talk about 85% funded or 90% funded or fully funded, there really isn't any such thing as fully funded. Either you're overfunded or you're underfunded, and that is all based on estimates. You go back 5-6 years, and we were overfunded. And within a couple of years, that thing took a swing between the economy and the 9/11 incident. We ended up being underfunded. I've said this publicly other places, and I'll say it here just in case I'm not around the next time you have to figure this up. Not that I will be an actuarial loss, but I may be going to pasture, at some point. But I would say to you, you never want to be fully funded, because if you're fully funded, you are then in danger of being overfunded. And if you're overfunded, we're going to explain that to you next week. What happens is that then people expect you to forever increase benefits. That's neither publicly popular nor is it fiscally responsible. Right. So you're better off to be in the 90 percentile. That makes sure you're responsible, but you're not in danger of having to go through a lawsuit that we went through not too long ago.
If you get overfunded, you also get sued.
Yeah, right. We had that. We spent almost $1 million on a lawsuit to defend the fund against a $100 million hit. So we're doing well, but we need to be vigilant, and 90% is a good target.
And that's right, we have. Yeah. Here, I thought it was going to be boring, but the last comments I just want to make with the ISF rates, that workers' comp and liability rates are going down a little bit, and then the General Service Agency and ISD rates are going up a little bit as were presented a couple weeks ago. Other than that, I just request that you would adopt the recommended actions in the board letter.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah. What of this manual has changed from last year's manual, besides rates? I mean, if the rate number's been changed.
Generally, that would be the things we changed. There's one item in the manual that I can think of off the top, and that is there's some budget, there's some grant information we're trying to request from the departments, because our plan is to get at least the grant application process approved through the budget on the ongoing grants. Like a lot of departments know that they're going to have basically the same grants next year as this year. They have to come to the board to request the board's approval to apply for the grant and then come back and accept the grant. We're trying to eliminate that first board letter by adopting the grants on a specific list that are being approved in the budget process to allow the departments to go ahead and apply for those recurring grants. That's the only thing that's really significantly different as far as our guidelines. We fine tune it year to year, but really the only changes are the numbers.
What would be a big help to me, and I'm sure to the other supervisors, is if you would give us slugging through this thing the first time, as Mr. Foyle, is finding out, it's a lot to slug through. After you slug through it one time, you really want to know where are the changes, and you don't want to hunt and find. Could you give us a red line copy of all the changes? Or, I don't mean, you don't have to do the whole thing as red line copy, or just something to highlight. On page 42, we changed this. On page 43, that would just direct us so that we can efficiently sort of see where the changes are rather than try to find
No problem. We can
That'd
do
be a big
that.
help.
That'd be good.
All right, thank you.
Supervisor Foy?
Yeah, that was a good point. I'd like to, because I didn't have the first one for last year, so I don't know. But the second thing, I think that's a good idea what you talked about, letting those people, they're already going to have those same grants, have that right as part of the budget process. Is there more to do? Because part of my thought process here is, what can we take away from people just having to go through this whole work to put board letters together and do that and be a little more efficient? It sounds like you're already starting down that path. Is there more things that we can do?
Well, we're trying to, it's kind of a integral process. We're trying to get to that point. Each year we discover new areas that we can find. We haven't sat around and brainstormed, but we're trying to fine tune the whole process as we go along. I think we've gotten our process down to where it's the whole budget development and the budget cycle is not driven by the process, but driven more by what the needs are and what the actual programs, and rather than process driven, it's program driven. And so, yeah, we're always looking for ways to improve upon the process, because we don't want the process to drive us.
No, I know there's some legal things you need to do, but I mean, the idea of having those people come up week after week after week and ask for somebody to say, can I go apply for this, then come back and say, I got it, now can I spend it? I mean, all those things, if there's more efficient ways to do it, it'd be great. Okay, thanks.
I also have a question. You lay out some goals, and to me, one of our goals is always, well, one of my goals is to see that we continue to increase our reserves, and I don't see that listed in as examples of goals.
I don't have that in front of me, but I think that we have a listed goal of 15% designation for subsequent year financing. That is our goal.
Okay.
And when we get to that point, then we feel like we're in a comfort zone. Let's put that. I don't know if we wouldn't probably want to continue to increase it, let's say 100% to, $800 million. That wouldn't be prudent on the one side. But I think 15% is generally viewed as a prudent number, which is about 2 months of operational ability. So we think that once we get to that number, then we'd feel pretty comfortable about taking any excess dollars and actually spending them for one-time purposes.
Right, and I just saying, I think that should be a stated goal to get to that, at least get to that 15%, and not necessarily in this year's budget. Obviously, it's going to be difficult to. I think we're at about 8.5 or something.
Yeah, we're about right in that range, correct.
So, but just that is a goal that we're working towards.
I agree, and if it's not in there, then that's
the higher that goal is, the higher that number is, the more squeezed everything else is.
As long as you're not, trying to meet that goal with current operations, then you're okay. If you're using one-time money and you're not expanding programs and using the one-time dollars to increase that number, I think we'll be okay. Maybe as far as squeezing, the operations.
One of the guidelines that your board adopted in order to get us to the goal, and the goal is in the manual, the 15% target, right?
Right. I think it is. I'll have one.
I'm sure it is. It has in years past.
I was just looking on page 30.
Okay, well, maybe we'll put it in more than one place. Right. But the goal that we have set to get there says that, first, we don't use last year's savings to balance this year's budget. And the fund balance, and there, generally speaking, is a fund balance, gets deposited in the account, which has been bringing it up. And what do we expect at the end of this year? We originally projected, we thought we might be as high as 10%. Is that revised downward?
Yeah, it's going to probably stay about the same as what our current projections are for this year's fund balance.
There's not going to be much. I thought there would be 5 to 10
Maybe
million.
$5 million is our outside guess.
Are we going to take a hit on the assessed value?
No, the assessed value we're looking for next year to go up in the range of 7% is our current estimate at this time. And we do discuss that with the assessor, and he's not endorsing it, but he's not uncomfortable with it. Let's say that. So we have to make. He's not quite to the point where he can really make an estimate. So it'll be a little later in the process.
We could kick it up a little bit.
Yeah, well, at least that's my goal. I would have my comfort zone is once we get to that 15%, and it isn't something that we have to continually put in. Once you hit that, you're there, and that money can stay. And obviously, as our overall budget grows, then we need to add a little bit more. But right. To me, that will help us so that when we are in those kind of squeezes, we have something to bounce off of. All right. Are there any other questions on this?
Paul, when you said 7%, you're using that as a forecasting average, or is that what you're going to use as an absolute the coming year?
No, that's our projection at this point in time for next year.
Right, but as far as the goal and the guideline that we have that tries to take like a 10 to 20 year rolling average, so that we don't go crazy during the good years and end up having to lay off when it comes back to normal.
Basically, the overall rolling average is a little bit higher than that, so we brought it down a hair, if that makes sense, right. Or the 10-year.
All right. Are there any other questions, comments on this? Shall we just go ahead and have a motion then to adopt the recommendations?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Seeing no objections on that, then those recommendations are passed.
Thank you.
And that concludes our time certain for now, and we can go back to our regular agenda, and I believe we're at policy matters. And this would be item 43, and Supervisor Foy with an appointment of Jerry Harris.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we're going to be appointing Jerry Harris to the Alcohol and Drug Board of the Mental Health Board. Mr. Harris is currently serving as the Secretary.
There you go.
There you go.
And member of the Executive Committee of the Mental Health Board and Chair of the Alcohol and Drug Advisory Board. He has over 36 years of healthcare management experience, including mental health and substance abuse. So I think we believe Mr. Harris would continue to be an asset for these boards. So.
Thank you. Got a motion and a second, and being on the Mental Health Board with Jerry, he is a great addition, and I think it's also wonderful to have the overlap, to have someone on both those boards, and I may do that myself. I like that idea. Motion and a second, seeing no objections, that passes, and then your next one is also an appointment?
Yes, the next one with reappoint Dr. Roseanne Michos to the Community Action of Ventura County. She has served on this commission since 2001 and is currently serving as a chair and a member of the executive committee. So I think we'd look forward to having her continue on that too. So
she's a very thoughtful person.
And she's also a member of the Moore Park City Council too.
Right. We have a motion and a second. Seeing no objections, and that reappointment stands. And item 45 is also an appointment?
Yeah, this is...
no, it's not an appointment. It's a summary.
No, okay, it's a summary of something I'd like to have us look at. As a new supervisor, I've had the opportunity to meet with the different elected officials and department heads and county staff. And during that time, we've heard many times that staff support needed for various commissions and advisory boards. One of these times we did that, somebody was talking about it takes almost 85 hours of work to try to put everything together for these meetings. And so I'd like to look in an effort to make sure we're using the best time of our staff, and the most use of that time is to look at these boards and to review maybe the non-mandated boards and have the CEO's office come back and bring back a possible action of which boards, what are we getting out of them? Are Are they being helpful? Are we getting, what I guess I'm asking is all the time and money invested in these boards, are we getting a return from them? Are the boards doing a good job advising? I also know on the other side, as probably some of us would know, it's difficult to find people for some of these boards and to get them to serve. So there may be an opportunity to combine boards. I'd just like to take the opportunity to have the CEO's office review this and bring back a report to the cost, the effectiveness of these boards. Sometimes I'm sure that things have been done 5, 10, 15, 25, 30 years ago, and they had a great purpose when they did them, but is it something that we currently need now? So that's what I'd ask.
Just like to suggest that as the CEO brings that back, you talked about mandated, not talking about mandated, looking at all the ones that are non-mandated.
Non-mandated boards, yeah.
When that comes back, the CEO may want to be able to identify which of those boards are sort of viewed as either necessary as a result of ordinances that we pass, like we said, as we do this, we're going to have a board for this particular reason, and it's just so we have that piece of information.
Sure, I think that'd be good, because we hate to say, no, we don't need this anymore when we have some ordinances issued due to
But there may be some boards, there are some boards that are more difficult to fill and all that, that might make some sense to combine some of these and hold off on some of our appointments until we get this back from the CEO.
Right. Well, I think that's a good idea. The other side of it, too, is that if we're asking the different departments to prepare what they need, and it spends a lot of time and money, we're putting extra strains on their budget to do that. I'm trying to see if there's something else. So, anyway.
I support the motion.
You know what I think would also be helpful is some committees take a lot more staff time than others, that we get a feel for the amount of staff time that's used to support those.
Well, that's exactly what I was looking for. If David would report that, that would be great.
If I understand the board or the motion, staff can quite easily inventory all of the commissions, committees, advisory groups, and we can then sort through those and categorize them as federal mandate, state mandate, local mandate, by ordinance, by resolution, minute order. Somebody thought it was a good idea, or whatever the history is. And then we can go to those that we have some control over, that is below the state, the local stuff. We will ask the department heads then to give us an estimate of what it costs to support that activity. I would think at that point that my report would be done. I'd bring it back to you. I would be a little uncomfortable rendering opinions as to the usefulness of what this is to you, because my opinions, for a variety of reasons, might differ substantially from you as the policymakers, and my commitment to Supervisor Flynn that I am not the sixth member of the board, so I'll try to avoid that.
That's a beautiful dodge.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you my opinions privately. You can decide which ones you want to go public with.
Well, and then in looking at these, some of these aren't necessarily mandated, but have been created, like the water districts. I don't know if we want to go there. Do you want to go there?
Well, I mean, some of those, I think there's some value to some of these. I'm just trying to get an understanding as you come in and you've seen somebody's asked, yeah, it's hard to get those. What are they doing? I don't know. I don't get anything from them. I just want to make sure that we're being effective in the use of, the people's money. Mm-hmm. We can take a look at them. You may know more than I do. I'm just, as a new, I'm trying to take a hard look at it. Yeah, just take a hard look at it. And some may come back and the water district people say, it's really neat. We need this.
So I would think that'd be probably more of a LAFCO function if they look at the services, the municipal services that are provided. If they see overlap or that something's not necessary, then that's something that they're charged with dealing with. I guess I don't know if we really would need to go to that one or not.
Well, I don't even think that's part of the motion. He's not asking us to look at special districts.
No, we're not.
He's asked us to look at our own county boards.
I'm thinking like water work districts. Would you consider that?
Well,
that's not part of the motion.
Okay.
Those are clearly in the realm of LAFCO responsibility. Okay. But what we're talking about here are committees that we set up.
Well, I'm thinking like Bell Canyon Water Works District we appoint to, for example. Oh. So. But I think if we want to take those off the table.
Those are independent, or dependent water districts.
I mean, I have no problem if you all believe the special districts like those are fine.
Well, I don't mind. Find out. I mean, do we have to appoint somebody to Bell Canyon Water District? I don't know. It would be worthwhile to know.
Well, the other option is, our Public Works Agency, I would think, would be taking on those roles that the citizens are doing now and giving input. But I'm willing to be open and see, what we have available.
Yeah.
Yes.
County Council.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
the special districts you're talking about are separate legal entities that would have to be dissolved through the local agency formation commission process. And it might be appropriate, if you're interested in pursuing that, to separate that category out from the discretionary boards, committees, and commissions that are not separate legal entities and do not involve LAFCO.
My suggestion is stick with the motion and stay away from the separate legal entities at this point in time.
I didn't want to make it really complicated. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that we're being
I
efficient.
think that'd
in
be
government, yeah.
easier for the CEO to go forward. And we can always look at the special districts if we need to.
That the county has
But
oversight of.
that goes to LAFCO, though. I mean, we're talking about districts like Camarosa, for example. I in no way am I going to support a motion to do away with that district. That's a LAFCO function.
Except we don't appoint Camarosa. I think that's the issue. Some that we are specifically appoint to.
LAFCO's done studies on all districts, whether they're appointed
Right.
or not.
Okay. So the motions will be for looking at just the county committees and commissions and boards.
Yes.
Not the districts. All right. We have a motion and a second. And you have 17 seconds, Mr. Williams, if you'd like to use those 17 seconds now.
Geraldine Williams, Supervisor Foy, I waited 2 hours to speak for 17 seconds to support you.
Thank you.
And welcome. See, you're the only one extending any kindness there. You see how rude Linda Parks has been to me. You know, that's kind of out of character today. And, you know, here's a citizen trying to participate in government.
Your time is up, Mr. Williams.
You have the authority to extend me time. Can I just...
You already exceeded it by 7 seconds.
Well, can I just finish my sentence?
Mr. Williams, I'm sorry you're not feeling the love today. We'll go on to our next item.
I didn't hear an answer. Can I at least finish my sentence?
Thank you for your support.
Boy.
We do have our motion and our second. Seeing no objections, that passes. Thanks for sticking around. We'll move now to item 46 on our Public Works Agency on the Watershed Protection District.
Good morning, Chair Park, board members, Mr. Johnston. For the record, I'm Gerhard Hubner, Deputy Director of the Watershed Protection District. Also with me today is Director Jeff Pratt and Robert Gallagher, Environmental Health Director, and RMA staff Daryl Seacrest. I'm here today before you to request your approval of the reference watershed study agreement as part of the cooperative development of the Malibu Creek bacteria TMDL. I have a short 2-minute presentation if you'd like to hear it. Otherwise,
I'd like to hear it.
okay, great. Briefly, a bit of background. Pursuant to the Federal Clean Water Act, in December 2004, the LA Regional Water Quality Control Board established a compliance schedule for implementation of total maximum daily loads for bacteria in Malibu Creek. A little background again. Total maximum daily loads are a sum of a responsible party's pollutant load allocation for point, non-point source, and natural sources, and are designed to bring an impaired water body into compliance with water quality objectives. The responsible parties, led by LA County, formed a consortium to coordinate efforts and to share certain costs. The consortium divided the Malibu Creek TMDL into 5 components. On March 2006, your board approved a cost-sharing agreement with the other consortium members to complete development of the implementation plan, which is now complete. The implementation plan development, as I mentioned, is complete. We are now working on the second element of the TMDL, known as a reference watershed study. The Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, or SQURP, is currently conducting a regional study to evaluate background bacteria levels in 5 Southern California county streams, and is now proposing to expand this work to include the reference watershed study. The proposed agreement continues Ventura County's participation in the consortium's efforts. The estimated total cost of the study is $165,000, using the same cost formula used for the implementation plan development. This formula is based on percentage of land area within the Malibu Creek watershed under the various agencies' jurisdictions. Approximately 27% of that watershed is located in unincorporated Ventura County. Accordingly, Ventura County has been assigned this percentage, and our percentage of the cost under this study would be $46,000. Please note that staff is not in agreement regarding the proper percentage cost allocation for future implementation and monitoring costs. And we believe that the results of this study will help establish proper pollutant allocation for each responsible parties. Watershed Protection District staff will administer the proposed reference watershed agreement, and Resource Management Agency staff will provide technical oversight. The cost of this work effort for the remaining fiscal year 2006-2007 is estimated to be $54,000 for RMA staff and $5,000 for district staff oversight, thereby making $105,000 the total cost projected for the county's participation in this phase of the Malibu Creek TMDL process. So in conclusion, staff recommends you approve the proposed reference watershed study agreement as contained in today's board letter. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I like the premise that the study itself will assist us in allocating the funds for the cleanup, the TMDL requirements, because as they are right now, doing it on land mass instead of population, the county is taking, I think, a bigger share than they should have to.
We definitely agree.
Good. Well, thank you for that extra report. I'll go ahead and move approval if there's no objection. Thank you.
We're not really with this working under a regional water quality
Absolutely.
mandate.
Yes.
It is. It's part of their basin plan, and it has a compliance and a set of deadlines for compliance.
And it's another one of those areas that's going to see rate increases as a result of regulation. We have a motion. Yes. A motion and a second. Did you second that, Supervisor Flynn? Thank you. Seeing no objection, then that passes. Thank you for bringing that. Item 47, ratification, the Sheriff's Department.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnson, Bruce McDowell from the Sheriff's Department, and this is our request that your board ratify the Sheriff's submittal of a grant application to the California Office of Traffic Safety requesting funds for the Forensic Sciences Laboratory. This is for the analysis of DUI cases, equipment, training, and overtime. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Move the recommended action. Motion and a second. Seeing no objections, that passes. Thank you. And I believe our next item was pulled. That was item 48. That's correct. So then on to item 49. I think this is our correspondence agenda. We have a motion and second on the correspondence agenda.
Is 48 full? That's what your notes said, but... As we go ahead to the next item, I'll call and find out.
48, we have a note from being removed from agenda.
Okay.
Oh, so the treasurer was the one that said, okay.
Yeah, it was Mr. Matheny's report that was pulled. And then for the correspondence agenda items 49 to 53, we did have a motion. Supervisor Bennett moved the correspondence agenda, and Supervisor Flynn second. Seeing no objections, then the correspondence agenda is complete, and that completes our regular portion of our meeting. We still have a couple of items for closed session, and County Council, do you anticipate an announcement?
One is possible, but not likely.
Okay, we do have the possibility of one, and from a closed session, then we will go ahead and adjourn our meeting. So at this point, we'll go to closed session. Thank you.